Yeah. What's the good word, everybody? It's your boy DKB here. Welcome to Jets Therapy. As you can see, it looks like I have some special guests in the building. Appreciate you guys coming through, though. I know I haven't been able to run through this the last couple weeks. We tried changing the time from late nights on Wednesdays to the Saturday afternoons because my little guys were supposed to be going to the gym. That doesn't seem to be the case. So you guys may hear some background noise and all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, let's go ahead. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and dive into some things here momentarily in terms of major takeaways from our season ending early. Cool. What's the good word, y'all? Once again, welcome in. This is Jets Therapy. I'm your boy DKBxJets. And it is a beautiful Saturday, at least on my side of town here in Vegas. Thinking about how things have gone off the rails, right? And I could probably look it up real quick, but I'm pretty sure off the top of my head, the last couple years for the month of November were probably 2-10, maybe. It hasn't been good for us by any stretch of the imagination, right? So very frustrating that, essentially before Thanksgiving every year, we're already out of the picture. Yeah, are you all right? When I take a look at, what's going on with the New York Jets currently, if we want to go top down, we start with some of we start with some of the recent rumors we've been getting, right? The expectation is that Robert Saleh, Nathaniel Hackett, Joe Douglas, pretty much the whole regime, we're going to run it back, right? At least that's what Connor Hughes was reporting. That's kind of the sentiment that a lot of people seem to share. Everybody hitched their wagon to Aaron Rodgers. He went down, and so it seems like Woody Johnson would potentially give everybody a mulligan on the year. Why are you doing bye-bye? Stop knocking stuff over. He would potentially give everybody a mulligan. Doesn't make sense to me. I've been on record saying it for a while. I see. Thank you. You don't just punt on a season the way that we did, right? It seemed like we were very reluctant to make any other quarterback moves that made sense to the public eye, right? You think about, and it doesn't matter if these guys are washed or not, right? When I think about it, I think about, Carson Wentz, a former top pick in the NFL. We've seen him have tremendous success, mostly with the Eagles, but even his stint with the Colts looked somewhat decent, right? I think he had almost 30 touchdowns. No. Look. I think he had almost 30 touchdowns, something like 6 or 7 interceptions. What were some other names out there? Jameis Winston, he's a guy that at least is a gunslinger, right? He doesn't have much of a passive personality, right? Which is something we feel like we probably would have needed. You gonna make this hard, huh? Felt like something we would need in this offense, right? You see a lot of checkdowns. You see a lot of throws out to the flats. You see a lot of eyeing down a receiver, the entirety of the play. So Jameis Winston, Carson Wentz, who are some of the other names that were out there? Joshua Dobbs for a late round draft pick. I know there was a few other names, but I'm kind of wore out with the whole quarterback, spin cycle right now. Nonetheless, though, there are plenty of names, right? So we punt on the season. We don't do anything to really give ourselves a chance. And this has been a consistent theme, at least since Joe Douglas has been here. So it's interesting hearing the Robert Saleh conversation, right? Because you get some people that throw all the excuses his way. What is he supposed to do with the quarterback rooms that he's had, right? Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, Mike White, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle now. Who do we have at one point? I think like David Fales was there when Sam Darnold was there. So I don't know. I can't subscribe to that, right? Sam Darnold, not a quarterback that Robert Saleh picked, right? It kind of gifted to him. They wanted to see what they can make work. You selecting Zach Wilson, though, that's all on you. And the subsequent quarterback moves since then, there's no scapegoat for that. Now, the part that, again, is very, irritating about the whole situation is that we had all those rumors that came out that nobody was on the same page when it came to Zach Wilson. Some people love the kid. Some people wanted nothing to do with him. And by the way Mike LaFleur kind of handled the whole situation, I would say that he was probably in that group that didn't want anything to do with Zach Wilson, which is crazy because Robert Saleh is not an offensive guy, right? So you would imagine that Joe Douglas and or Mike LaFleur was going to have the biggest say on which quarterback went. And to be fair, at least, crappy draft for quarterbacks, right? Trevor Lawrence is doing anything from okay to above average. Then you have Justin Fields. There's going to be trade rumors with him, right? Especially if the Bears can land that top draft pick. Obviously, Zach Wilson looks like the worst of the bunch. Trey Lance, he's already shipped away, so he's in hiding with the Dallas Cowboys. And then you have Mac Jones, who he's been benched multiple times for Bailey Zappi. So not a great group by any means, but then you still, as mentioned, have all of these other guys from undrafted free agency to Mr. Irrelevant playing in the draft, playing in this season, and they're looking good, right? The Jake Brownings of the world, Brock Purdy, obviously, Joshua Dobbs is mentioned. There's plenty of backups playing right now. And if you have to play your backup, you're already in a pretty bad situation, but feels like we never really gave ourselves a fighting chance. So from the front office to the coaching staff, if there's not going to be any changes, the major takeaway is if you remember when we first got Joe Douglas and then brought Robert Saleh on, year one looked like a tragedy, but we kind of felt like we had a plan, right? Everybody obviously harped on Robert Saleh and how bad that defense performed, but we were switching from a 3-4 to a 4-3. We didn't have the personnel that he needed. And then offensively, obviously, that wasn't, he had nothing to do with that. Michael LaFleur tried to make it work with Sam Darnold, and then everybody ultimately decided the best bet would be to move on. There was a plan in place, though, right? It felt like the way that we attacked previous off seasons. We knew what we wanted to accomplish. It was just a matter if we picked the right talent and if we had the right schemes in place. I haven't felt that since the 2020 draft or 2020 offseason, right? Everything's been a little bit chaotic since switching coordinators. Obviously that changes up how Joe Douglas is going to work with the team to identify talent and, the certain archetypes and, skill sets they want from an offensive perspective. But that whole Aaron Rodgers offseason that we just went through, it didn't really feel like an authentic offseason for us, right? We really bowed down and took the knee to do anything possible to bring in Aaron Rodgers. And to me, that had Woody Johnson's footprints all over it. So cool. Now that we got him here, now that he's essentially, I would say it's more likely than not that Rodgers does come back and play for us next year. We can hopefully get back to that place that we've seen Joe Douglas originally get a lot of us excited for, right? You have a quarterback in place. If we want to start talking, position groups, the quarterback room needs to have wholesale changes. Aaron Rodgers is your starter, but we've seen what happened with the bad quarterback plan. So now, even if you want to keep Zach Wilson on the roster, fine. By all means, be my guest. But he needs to be relegated to essentially the third string or emergency quarterback situation. We need to go out there and make sure we can find another backup. In my opinion, if we're not going to find a young guy that we can groom through free agency, we need to draft us a quarterback. And I'm not saying it has to be a first-round draft pick or anything. There's plenty of guys that you see on day 2, plenty of guys that you see on day 3. Think for a recent example, Clayton Tune from the last draft. Guys that possess an abundance of great physical tools. They just need to sit and kind of develop the mental side or, work through progressions, protection scheme, all that kind of stuff, right? Which is what Aaron Rodgers is there to do. He should allow you to spend time and really. Sorry, hold on. I got text coming through. He should. Whoever's sitting behind him is going to benefit not only from his knowledge, but they're going to benefit from the fact that you can really hone in and allow that guy to not worry about having to necessarily jump in at the drop of a dime and have to play, right? I'm still a little bit old school in that mentality. I think you should be able to slow play certain positions or at least certain players. Quarterback is one of those that if you have the luxury of doing so, I think you should, right? The Jets, seems like we always hand the keys to the Mercedes to whoever we draft. We find a way, right? If there's a quarterback competition set up, it doesn't really have that feeling, right? Somebody's getting the majority of snaps in the training camp practices. You see how preseason plays out, and it just seems heavily skewed to the draft pick. Dark Soldier, my guy. Does this mean you no longer want everyone fired, or you're just going with it? Nah, at this point, I'm just going with it. Out of my hands, anyways, right? Who the hell am I? But it seems like, from a media perspective, it seems like if you're going to buy into the whole Aaron Rodgers situation, it just makes sense that you would allow that group to try to run it back and see what they can achieve. So, yeah, I don't know. At this point, I'm just kind of rolling with the punches, and we'll see what happens. If they do decide they want to make changes, I'm all for it. My only concern as far as the coaching staff goes is that if Robert Saleh does get canned, I would at least hope that we can. I actually like a 3-4 defense better, but with the talent we've assembled, I would hope that we stay with somebody that will want to continue to run a 4-3 scheme. Saleh gets fired. I think Jeff Ulbrich definitely has a strong chance of getting a head coaching position somewhere. Who else is on the staff? Mike Rutenberg, the linebacker coach, maybe, but I don't know if you'd necessarily have an internal promotion there, although it would make sense. Plenty of guys on that defensive coaching staff that have done great. Maybe a Tony Odom or somebody like that. But yeah, as far as the quarterback position goes, I strongly think we need to go and draft us a young guy. If you want to try to continue with your Zach Wilson plan, by all means, cool. But then that means that you have another young arm that has some, a high ceiling that you can work with alongside him, right? The plan I envision is that you have a young rookie, right? I don't know what the baseline would be, right? Meaning I don't know what the floor would look like for that rookie. It depends on where we're drafting them, kind of what the backstory for him is. But if Zach Wilson doesn't look better than your rookie, I think that speaks volumes. Sorry, Chun. I think that speaks volumes. So right then and there, you already know who you're going to be rocking with by the time that offseason is over. Cool. You have your quarterback situation panned out, right? You feel much better in that situation having Rodgers, a rookie, Zach Wilson, and if they do decide to let Zach Wilson go, a free agent. And at least that way you're setting yourself up for the future still. You're giving yourself a stable environment for that 2024 season. Ulbricht's going with Saleh. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's people like to spread their wings at some point. I can't imagine you want to follow your mentor to the ends of the earth, right? At some point, you got to go out there and see what you can do. Running back position, I don't think we're actually as bad off as I originally thought. You still have Breece Hall. He's having a terrible stretch of games. But, oh, it's so frustrating. Whatever. People blame Nathaniel Hackett quite a bit, right? I'll probably do some deeper all 22 research. By the time the season officially ends, I can't even really watch the games anymore. But nonetheless, Brees Hall, you still feel really good about him. Talent-wise, even though the production isn't there right now, everybody knows undeniable RB1. You have Izzy Abanikanda. You have no choice at this point but to pretty much make a stronger commitment to him, right? Because you got rid of Michael Carter. The part that is puzzling to everybody is that you still have not decided to use him, right? You hyped him up as part of these personnel changes you were going to make. And then you defaulted to this BS excuse when his playing time didn't sync up with what you said to what did he blame it on? Oh, pass protection. Izzy Abanikanda isn't quite there where they would want him to be at. And I thought this was a Mike LaFleur issue originally, right? Remember when we couldn't get Denzel Mims on the field and LaFleur was saying, well, I need him to know all three spots. He doesn't know them all. We have other guys that have higher value, right? Special teams play. They at least know the roles, et cetera, et cetera. And we were livid, right? We were irate. That's the dumbest thing ever. He's one of your best skill position players at this time. Get him on the field. Play him with something he's comfortable with. Hi. Maybe this is a West Coast offense thing, right? Maybe this isn't relegated to just Mike LaFleur being young and not knowing anything. Doesn't seem to just be relegated to Nathaniel Hackett being old, washed, and wanting to stick to the, I guess, the true version of the West Coast offense, right? Maybe it's just a New York Jets curse thing. We talked about this before. For whatever reason, seems like when people come to the Jets, they forget how to do their jobs or the things that made them, great candidates to be an offensive coordinator. Nonetheless, Izzy Abanikanda can't pass protect. He'll have all offseason to kind of work on that. And we've seen the explosiveness during the preseason. We've seen it a little bit in the limited snaps we've got to see so far. So you have Brees Hall, Izzy Abanikanda, I imagine you're walking into the season as your RB2. Dalvin Cook's definitely going to be gone, right? We're not bringing him back for another, crap show there. And then when you take a look at the practice squad, there was a guy I loved on there, and I wish we got a chance to see him maybe this year. Xavier Valade. Cold. The man's cold. I think he rushed for almost 2K yards. Excuse me. Thank you. I think he rushed for almost 2,000 yards his last year at college. Man's great in the receiving department, great in the rushing department. Can contribute on special teams. Like he's solid. He was a pro-ready running back coming in. His biggest knock was that they ran him into the ground. I think he had almost 1,000 carries, if not a little bit over, by the time he was wrapping up college. But the man's dope. So you could potentially say that you have an RB3 on the roster already. Yeah, it's you, Dada. Otherwise, though, you look to the draft, right? And I know the guys over at Jets X Factor, they're big fans of drafting a running back every year. But I think you at least have your three guys on the roster. Whether you think you can make improvements or not is another conversation. Chun, they say hi. Hi. They say hi. You say hi? Hi. Gerard, I appreciate you, my guy. Love Ulbrich, love his style, straight football minded, but I can't see him being a head coach. I don't have any problems with it. Originally, I didn't. Yeah, you gonna go face first into the chips. You a trip. Yeah, originally, I didn't have any problems with him, right? I didn't like a 4-3 defense, but Robert Saleh's been able to craft it to perfection, essentially. But I don't have any problems with it. If anything, he's going to run into the classic situation all defensive coordinators do, where he's going to have no idea what's really going on with the offense and how he can try to help address and fix things on that side if they run into issues. But in terms of a defensive coordinator getting his guys into position and stuff, I love everything I've seen from him. Like, remember, he started off with a shitstorm, right? The team did terrible the first year. The second year, we're talking about all this rotation stuff. He was able to turn that around. Now everybody's bought in there. He's been able to get C.J. Mosley put in a position to be one of the best players at his unit, being over the age of 30. He's helped develop Quincy Williams into one of the top linebackers at his position. I've heard multiple guys like Roquan Smith and some of the other top guys cite both of those guys as top 5 linebackers this year. We haven't really thought about the third linebacker spot, right? Sherwood was supposed to man that spot. Nobody's really had any complaints there. Our biggest issue is that the safety unit hasn't been everything it's been cracked up to be. And I can't necessarily knock that either. Tony Adams hasn't been as healthy as I thought he was going to be this year. And then Whitehead's a problem. I don't like him whatsoever. Yeah. But I expect we'll move on from him this offseason, right? Ashton Davis looks good. I won't say you should just hand him a starting spot for next year. Spend these last 5 games getting him those, extra, let's say he plays 40 snaps a game. Get him those extra 300 or so snaps to kind of bump up his numbers and see what he looks like. But yeah, I really have no complaints. I think he could be a solid guy elsewhere. Can he pick the right offensive coordinator? Who knows, right? He's seen what not to do with Robert Saleh, so maybe that helps him. All right. 2 boys, Dark Soldier. My other one's at the gym. This one should have been 2. They're just that cute. I was the same way, though. Everybody thought I was a girl for the longest, according to my mom. Jets need to draft a quarterback in this draft. Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I originally was thinking, especially since we started reaching top 5 territory for our draft pick, that it had to be in round 1. I think we might be in that rare situation, though, where we don't actually need a round 1 guy. As I mentioned, I think we can get away with the guy with a lot of tools, maybe a specific skill set right away, and then, get him developed over the course of this year. Maybe Aaron Rodgers gives us another year in 2025. Who knows? But pick the guy with the high ceiling, get him developed, see what you can do, right? And that way you also don't have the pressure and the need to continue this trend of trying to get a highly drafted quarterback on the field right away, which maybe helps out everything, right? And at least for Robert Saleh, it gives him, as mentioned, a plan for the future moving forward for life after Aaron Rodgers. I see. Lily came out. When you take a look at our wide receiver position, I'll skip fullback. Fullback is whatever to me. But you take a look at our wide receiver position, Garrett Wilson's still at number 1. And let me check what he was doing stat-wise real quick. But I believe he's still on track for 1,000 yards somehow. Let me see. Garrett, where are you? Here we go. Okay, so Garrett Wilson currently has 745 yards on 67 receptions and 3 touchdowns. Do they give me the projections here? Yeah, so he's still projected to end the season with 95 catches, 1,055 yards, and 1 more touchdown to end the season with 4. So playing through 4 quarterbacks, each one as terrible as the next one. Each one worse off, than the next one. He's still projected to have 1,000-yard season. That'll be 2 back-to-backs with Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian, Mike White as your quarterbacks. Beyond me, I think our wide receiver 1 is not out of, it's not in question. We have Garrett Wilson there. Wide receiver 2, you have nobody, right? Allen Lazard, to me, falls into the same category that Corey Davis was. He came from the Packers as a wide receiver 2, technically a wide receiver 1. And we bought him hoping that maybe he could be that true wide receiver 2 for Garrett Wilson, right? As a wide receiver 1, he didn't look amazing. As a wide receiver 2, to me, he didn't look amazing. His best years came when he was that 3rd and 4th option. Yeah. So I think the Jets, much like Corey Davis, right? He came as a wide receiver 1. He was a strong wide receiver 2, but you hoped you got that wide receiver 1 player. That didn't happen with Allen Lazard. So I think when you take a look at the Jets weapon hierarchy right now, you say Garrett Wilson, you say Tyler Conklin, you say Breece Hall, right? Those are the 3 top guys that your passing attack will go through. For the wide receiver room specifically, we don't have a wide receiver 2, at least nobody that stepped up this year. As a wide receiver 3, I would say you start having some options, right? It's either Allen Lazard or it's going to be a guy like Xavier Gibson. And I'm kind of staying away from like the slot versus boundary receiver type situation here right now. But basically, it's just being a 3rd option in that wide receiver room. Things look a little bit better. Xavier Gibson, Allen Lazard, I'm cool with that. With Aaron Rodgers being back at the helm, you assume everybody's going to kind of keep, be bumped up a level in terms of the performance. Wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, all of those look a lot better, right? Garrett Wilson, let's just say draft pick, right? Hi. Let's say a Malik Neighbors or whoever it is, right? Pencil in a draft player. Then let's say Xavier Gibson. Let's say Allen Lazard is your 4. Let's say Jason Brownlee is 5 and Irvin Charles is 6, right? Just to round it out, minus whatever free agent additions and stuff like that. I think you feel much better about that particular room at that time than what we're seeing right now. Everybody's playing out of position. Everybody's doing a terrible job outside of Garrett Wilson. And I would have argued Xavier Gibson, but he's been more so boom and bust, right? He either has a great game or he goes relatively missing. And I don't think it's necessarily for a lack of talent or like route running ability or anything like that. We know the quarterbacks and how they've operated. We don't see the whole field the way we need to. Tight end room, I think we're solid, right? Next year, I could very easily see them running it back. Tyler Conklin, CJ's cut. Jeremy Ruckert, tight end 2, and then you have a guy like Kenny Yeboah as tight end 3. Maybe you spend a late round pick on a tight end. Maybe you just go out and find you a priority undrafted free agent, something like that. But your first 2, your tight end room is set, right? I don't think there's any changes there that are going to shift anything. I've seen some crazy stuff. I see it's the trees. I've seen some crazy stuff on mock drafts recently where like people want us to try to draft Brock Bowers. I don't think any of that stuff really makes a ton of sense right now. Find out what you actually have in a guy like Tyler Conklin when Aaron Rodgers returns. See if you actually have a future tight end 1 in Jeremy Ruckert, or if he's just an excellent tight end 2, which isn't the worst thing ever. And then you have a tight end 3. Maybe he has a specialized role. Maybe you try to go and find you not Irvin Charles. Huh? Yeah? Did you want on the couch? Maybe you go and try to find yourself a Lawrence Cager type guy again, right? Who knows? Either way, though, tight end room is set. I have no complaints there. And then the offensive line. You want to stay up here? The offensive line is where we need a ton of help, right? Will Mekhi Becton come back? Hold on, let me run through some of this real quick. Yep. I'm on board there. What's good, Gerard? All right, so all good, man. I run through this all day, every day when we take them out. Will Mekhi Becton come back? Or do the Jets even want him back? Because I think that's going to be a huge discussion that needs to be had, right? Mekhi Becton has been solid. He hasn't been anything, above average or elite to me, right? He's a guy that at minimum, when you just take a look at the way he's built, the style of tackle he was at Louisville, what they asked him to do, he was a road grader, right? He's going to bury the defensive end / linebackers on the other side. He was going to open up a path. He's been a better pass blocker than a run blocker this year. And when he's gotten to the second level to take advantage of being able to go and hit some linebackers or safeties, we've seen him look like he's playing guessing games. So don't be getting crazy up there, Chuck. So it's been frustrating, right? And then I think he's already given up, I don't want to say already, but he's given up 6 or 7 sacks this year. As a rookie, it was a little bit more impressive, right? You're coming in, you're not known as a pass blocker. It made more sense, right? Looked like one of the better tackles in the league. Hey, what's up? You need a show? He looked like one of the better tackles in the league, but now 2 years removed, you're seeing arguably him take a step back. I don't know. You could do worse off than Mekhi Becton, but do we bring him back for, I think I've seen his projected contract value was probably about 10 to 12 million a year. I don't know if I'd be comfortable dishing that out if I'm Joe Douglas. Can you find a guy within that range for the same amount? I don't know. Gunny brought up Bakhtiari. Maybe you go out and try to spin for a guy like that. Kind of another luxury for Aaron Rodgers that he gets a friend. Actually, his best friend over. I remember reporting on that. Maybe that's an option. Laken Tomlinson, he's going to be here, right? Restructured contract. There's not really going to be anything we do about it. If we decide to eat that contract, which I think cost us just under $11 million in dead cap space, I would be surprised. Will I cry that we're moving on from Laken Tomlinson? Not at all. But I do think we need to find another Nick Herbig type guy behind him that can be developed into a starter. Maybe we have a guy like that on the team already. I mentioned Jason Poe that's been on our practice squad that we signed from the 49ers for a while. Maybe he develops over the course of this season and the offseason and can come in and make some noise next year. If nothing else, though, you need to continue to throw picks at this offensive line, right? I think at minimum, Joe Douglas has always signed at least one offensive lineman. He's drafted at least one offensive lineman. The trade-ups, I'm not a fan of, right? Like it's great having Breece Hall, but maybe that could have been another offensive lineman. It's great having Elijah Vera Tucker, but maybe that could have been another offensive lineman. So it would be great to see us overinvest, right? We've mentioned this a bunch of times already. When you take a look at the offseason, Robert Saleh seems like he has half of the league's defensive linemen on the team, right? I think this offseason we had about 22 people, maybe at the highest number, that was practicing and fighting for spots. We need that same energy on the offensive line, right? We should be rolling out there with nothing less than like 13, 15 offensive linemen. See what you can do. You brought in a ton of guys that you can you brought in a bunch of guys that you at least know something about. Bring all of them in, draft some guys, try to sign some people. We need to, and I know it'll be kind of recreating the offensive line once again. But we need to try to start fielding a starting five that's not switching up, every other day. Boom. Because it's very frustrating. I mean, when Mekhi Becton ends up being one of your healthiest offensive line members this season, after missing 2 years, things have fallen off the rails. And you can't help injuries, but it's not like the talent is elite either. Elijah Vera Tucker, elite, but he's going to start having asterisks next to him because he's going to be injured for 2 years in a row. You have Max Mitchell. We're still hoping he can actually develop into a solid starter for us. You have Joe Tippmann, who you feel really great about. And not only has he showed to be a starting level player at guard, but also at center. So at least you have that versatility there. Laken Tomlinson mostly has been a dud, but he's at least looked okay this season. At least after the first couple weeks, he turned it around. And then you don't really have much, right? Maybe Carter Warren. He hasn't looked elite. He's looked okay to average. He's kind of had the same type of performances as a guy like Max Mitchell to me, in my opinion. Not quite as strong. But again, maybe a full offseason helps him out. So it's very up in the air. How much will Joe Douglas commit to actually how much will Joe Douglas commit to actually trying to have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, right? Between wide receiver, trying to find a weapon there, between the offensive line and how much, we're in shambles there from a talent perspective, from a health perspective. It's a lot. And then keep in mind that you still have to go out there and try to make sure this defense doesn't fall off. From a defensive line perspective, I'm in the opinion that we'll always be good, right? We made things work with the guy that didn't even fit the build that we generally love to see on the defensive line in Al Woods. Quentin Jefferson's essentially having a career year. Quentin Williams hasn't been as elite on paper, racking up stats all over the place like we saw last year. But he's still up there leading the league in categories like pressures versus double teams, pressures in general. You're seeing the development of Jermaine Johnson, who a lot of people thought was a bust last year. He's looking like one of the better guys in the NFL this year as a two-way player, run and pass coverage. Run and the ability to rush the passer. And then you have Will McDonald, who's essentially getting the Jermaine Johnson treatment, right? Handful of touches. Let's see what you can do with them. He's been a lot better about getting pressure the last couple of weeks. Maybe he'll break out next year. At the very least, he's been able to help replace a guy like Carl Lawson, which is a huge win. Linebacker unit, you're having a duo. Yes. You're having a duo that'll probably finish as one of the top 3 or 5 linebacker. How do you say this? Duos, I guess, in the NFL. A little silly. They'll finish as one of the top linebacker units, right? You have a guy that's been developing behind the scenes, Sherwood. You have somebody you feel really good about that Robert Saleh mentioned could be let me think about what he said again. Chaz Surratt was a guy that he said feels like could be not my nose. I think he just said something simple like he thinks he could be a starter type linebacker. He just wasn't healthy consistently. So you have a guy there that could be a strong replacement option for a guy like CJ Mosley. Oh, you wanna do the most. I thought you said you was gonna sit. So I think the linebacker unit is still in safe hands, right? Between I can't talk to the people if you being crazy. Between Saleh, between Jeff Ulbrich, between linebackers coach Mike Rudenberg, Chun, stop. You're near the edge. I'm pretty comfortable that any linebacker we bring in, we should be able to see a reasonable. Don't tell you no. Look, who's that? Who's that? Yeah. I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to make anybody work from a linebacker's perspective. Safety, I think Tony Adams could take another jump. Looking back on it, Tony Adams last year was probably the equivalent of what we're seeing with Ashton Davis this year, right? He looks great in a small sample size. We opened him up to being a starter, and he's been okay. I'd actually check in on kind of how his entire body of work has looked, but obviously he has the athleticism back there to succeed. Skill wise, being able to go out there and be that free safety, that final last line of defense, and his versatility, I think all of that helps out. He's just a guy that doesn't have a ton of experience, right? There's a reason why he was an undrafted free agent, but there was also a reason why we elected to keep him over the roster over a draft pick. So I'm comfortable there. He's definitely been one of the better safeties that we've had in recent years. Maybe he takes a jump, right? I was way off on him. I bought into the offseason hype. I think he had the most amount of picks off of Aaron Rodgers during the offseason. He was laying people out. Seems like he's taken some bad angles and, some other different issues this year. But ultimately, I think Tony Adams could still be a great, great player. I had him as probably a top 5 safety by the time the season was over, so that's laughable now. But he's definitely not a problem within this defense for letting up big plays or, touchdowns, anything of that nature. Jordan Whitehead is probably going to be the easiest position for us to upgrade. Now, I don't want to necessarily crap all over Jordan Whitehead. I think he's at best, I think he's probably a solid safety. I think at best he's probably a solid safety. You'll see some breakout games, right? We had that week 1 Buffalo Bills. We seen him recognize route combinations and jump on things extremely quickly. Considering path coverage wasn't supposed to be his strong suit either, I found that impressive. But the guy that I thought we was getting from the Buccaneers that was going to be playing closer to the line of scrimmage, keep in mind he's played more of a deep safety role for us than anything else. The guy that I thought we was getting from the Bucs that was cracking people at the line of scrimmage consistently, that was able to fight through traffic, that actually had generally decent tackling ability and form, that's not the guy we got. So it's a little disappointing. I do think him playing out of position feeds into a lot of the issues that we're seeing where, there's a world of difference between playing, 2 to 5 yards up from the line of scrimmage and being able to recognize things or just hone in on a particular section of the field than playing that D safety role. Now you're 20 yards back. Now you have to, it's a little bit slower, right? Depending on kind of your processing and how you see the field. You're a little bit slower recognizing where the play is going. Guys have a little bit more of a head of steam when they're coming at you, right? Now you got to face an offensive tackle that's already been able to get a couple steps on you. You got a guard maybe that's pulling 330 pounds versus, maybe you being just around 200. Not going to help the best. The various bunch packages and different things that, you may group a wide receiver to. So it's a lot. Not everybody's generally able to handle that transition like that, which is why people will pay a lot more to go out there and get an excellent free safety. But yeah, again, I think it's easily the best position. He's been terrible with his missed tackle rate. The takeaways have been great, but they generally come in like one game. Not excluding this season, you don't really see him get stuff consistently over the course of the season. He has one or two big moments, and then you kind of forget about him. And the only reason he comes back up again is because you see him blow a bunch of tackles. There's a ton of miscommunications between him and Sauce Gardner for whatever reason, especially in the red zone. I think you could easily knock off maybe 2 to 5 touchdowns in the last couple of years. And it always seems to be the same issue. I talked about it before. Somebody goes to the flats. Somebody runs something simple like a curl or a hook route. And both guys go for the hook route, right? Should be very, very simple. Sauce Gardner's already towards the boundary. So I don't know. Maybe it's Sauce Gardner. Maybe it's not Jordan Whitehead. I don't know. But you think that would be an easy thing for those two guys to figure out right away. So I'm a fan of moving on from him. Does that mean Ashton Davis has to be his replacement? No. But I would argue that it's definitely easier to go out there and find somebody to play at the line of scrimmage than it would to find you a guy like Tony Adams to man the deep spots. But luckily for us, hopefully we don't have to tinker with that defense too much. You still need to add some interior guys. You need to go out there and find you at least another safety or two, one as a starter, one as potentially a depth piece. And otherwise, I think you're fine. I think you can get away with maybe just bringing in another crop of undrafted free agents or taking a look at the guys that you brought in this last year, and you should be fine. So if I'm ranking priorities, anyways, nonetheless, to kind of wrap things up, if it doesn't make a ton of sense, and we've seen this kind of backfire on us before, more is not always merrier. Maybe go out there and see who you can add to the offensive side of the coaching staff to help figure things out. It's ultimately kind of a null point because you have Aaron Rodgers and, he doesn't really need an offensive coordinator per se. But maybe you need to go out there and kind of infuse some talent to that group. Outside of the front office and coaching staff, wide receiver, I would probably say needs to be number one. Offensive line, and you can pretty much enter in any spot, guard, tackle. Center we're good at, right, with Joe Tippmann. But guard and tackle, so wide receiver, tackle, guard, those would probably be my 3 in that order. Strong safety. And then I would say probably defensive tackle. You want that, Chippy? No Chippy? Okay. Those would probably be my 5, right? I don't think this offseason is as crazy as many of us imagine it to be. We do have a lot of holes, but I think we have a lot of potential solutions in place too. But the biggest one is definitely going to be Aaron Rodgers. When he comes back, I think you're going to see everybody kick things up. They're going to step it up a notch. Nobody wants to disappoint the Hall of Famer or be the reason why you couldn't get a ring with the Hall of Famer. So I think we'll see things there. But at this point, there's just a lot more questions into how we go about trying to fix things rather than us not having the talent to fix things, right? Keep in mind, we still went into this year thinking that we had a Super Bowl roster. Defensively, yes. Offensively, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a no. Allen Lazard looks a lot better with Aaron Rodgers. You imagine you would have been able to use Mecole Hardman's speed better, even if that just meant he was a decoy. Xavier Gibson's speed, his gadget ability, his natural slot ability. And then maybe you would have been able to go out there and see something from a guy like a Jason Brownlee or something if he got called up. Who knows? But yeah, I don't think there's as many questions necessarily, or not questions. I don't think there's as much void of talent as a lot of people kind of harped on this year. Quarterback play has definitely had a huge say-so in that. Let's go eat and play? Yeah. Yeah? All right, tell them bye-bye. Say bye.
No.
No? Wow.
Oh.
Say bye. We gotta go play. Say bye. Say thanks for watching. Okay, well, I appreciate you guys that came through. Sorry for all the chaos. Hopefully next week's a little bit more chill if they both go. Otherwise, a little bit more draft content is going to start coming out for me personally, mixed in with whatever news and stuff comes up. So appreciate you guys coming through as always, and I'll catch you again. Peace.